Quite often today, we hear it stated that the pandemic we're going through is really unprecedented. We say that with all the sickness and death, the economic loss, the failure of businesses, the loss of jobs and income, the separation that families are experiencing, we're going to have a really different Advent season, a really different Christmas, one like no other. But that really isn't true. This is the worst pandemic that we've experienced in over a century. And we're experiencing many real hardships. And Christmas will be different this year. But we've dealt with hard times with painful loss before. The previous pandemic, the Spanish flu back in 1917, was right in the middle of World War I. 50 million people died just from the flu. And then there was all the loss of life and so much destruction from the war. Following World War I was the Great Depression, and that resulted in tremendous poverty all over the world, real suffering for millions and millions and millions of people. And then after the Great Depression, we had World War II. 70 to 85 million people died in World War II, most of them civilians. There was tremendous suffering. And a lot of that suffering that they experienced then was similar to the suffering that people are experiencing today. Many of you probably know the popular Christmas song, "I'll Be Home for Christmas." It was written during World War II, and it was meant to reflect the holiday season through the eyes of a soldier overseas, far from home. But in the song he says, "I'll be home for Christmas. You can plan on me. Please have snow and mistletoe and presents for the tree. Christmas Eve will find me where the love light gleams. I'll be home for Christmas, if only in my dreams." The soldier singing the song was experiencing the painful separation from his family at Christmas, the separation that so many of us experience. But he's still trying to have hope, to be as positive as he could. That attitude is very similar to what we see in the first reading from Isaiah this weekend. He says, "I rejoice heartily in the Lord. In God is the joy of my soul, for he has clothed me with a robe of salvation and wrapped me in a mantle of justice." He was writing to the Israelites who were returning from captivity in Babylon. But even though they were now free and returning home, their city, Jerusalem, had been leveled. The temple, the center of their life, their society, their religion, had been destroyed. But Isaiah promises a rebirth, a rebuilding. He speaks of a garden and plants springing up. He speaks of a new justice and praise of God, because God would make his presence known again. They had had dark days in captivity in Babylon, but now a new light was coming, and people needed to have hope, to be faithful, to regroup. It would not be easy or quick, but they needed a real commitment that God would be with them. This Advent has a similar message for us. We have experienced so much suffering and death, sometimes people we actually know. There has been the loss of jobs and businesses and income. Most of us have experienced a forced separation from our families. But there are signs of hope. Vaccines are becoming available. New treatments for COVID-19 are being developed. Rebuilding our lives and our communities is possible, but it's going to require commitment and work. On the part of the government, they need to have a plan. And so the Ministry of Health is saying, stay home except for really necessary trips outside. The Ministry of Health is saying, observe all the health regulations and the quarantines. The Ministry of Education has closed all the schools. That's the government's commitment. On the part of us, the people, a commitment is required also. We need to commit to following the rules, to stay home, to limit our contact with other people, to wash our hands, to use the sanitizer, to wear masks faithfully. That's what we need to do. And we must also trust that God will be with us. God was with the Israelites and led them home from Babylon. God helped us to get through the horrors of the 20th century. And God will help us now to rebuild our lives, our community, our economy. God will help us to recreate the kingdom of God in an even better way. That is what Advent is all about. Recognizing the presence of God, recognizing how God helped Israel and us in the past, and realizing God will be with us to help us again.